So the government just released 80,000 pages that were formerly redacted JFK files on the JFK assassination. A lot of people have been wanting this. You know, you talk to some people, they really want the Epstein files. Other people, they just haven't given up on the JFK assassination. For years, you had conspiracy theorists just say there just isn't something that sits right. Lee Harvey Oswald, yes, was blamed, yes, was the shooter, but there's something that's not right. A lot of people were saying there was a second shooter in the grassy knoll. There were so many conspiracy theories about this, and for some reason, it just never died out. It never ended. This is one that kind of just kept coming back as something that just did not sit right with the American people. When they announced this, the Trump administration just completely recently, if you don't know, dropped the ball. They majorly failed when they released the Epstein files. It was a joke. It was wrong. I have a show on that. It'll be linked in the description somewhere to the Epstein file release. And a lot of people were concerned that this is just another smoke and mirrors. And I can assure you, after in just like literally 2 minutes, you're going to know that this actually wasn't smoke and mirrors. And there's already some good information that we were able to pull out of that. Now, no one's read all 80,000 pages yet. I'm sure as the weeks go on, more information is going to come to the surface. And if there's any information that's good and useful for you to know, I'll definitely do a part 2 of today's. But let's jump in to this first. Lee Harvey Oswald is the guy who shot and assassinated President Kennedy. Lee Harvey Oswald was born October 18th, 1939, and was a U.S. Marine veteran. He was placed in juvenile detention at the age of 12, during which he was assessed by psychiatrists for emotionally disturbed due to lack of a normal family life. He attended 12 schools in his youth, quitting repeatedly. At age 17, he joined the Marines, where he was court-martialed twice and jailed. In 1959, he was discharged from active duty into the Marine Corps Reserves. Then he flew to Europe, defected to the Soviet Union. He lived in Minsk, married a Russian woman named Marina, and had a daughter. In June 1962, he returned to the United States with his wife, eventually settling in Dallas, Texas, where their second daughter was born. Oswald shot and killed Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963, from the 6th floor window of a Texas school book depository as Kennedy traveled through the motorcade. And the CIA, for years, has been telling us that Oswald has acted alone, that it's not, there's no involvement by the CIA, he acted alone. And that was a lie. Let's look at this document. So this is the document. It's kind of faded, but there is a little bit that we can go through this. This is what the memo says. I'm actually reading this document for those that are listening to the audio. In a second, when I say quote, I'm gonna be reading the document. And I quote, "At 0900 this morning, I talked with Frank, recently returned to the Warren Commission inquiry concerning the timetable of Oswald's stay in Finland in October 1959, including his contact with his Soviet consul." Remember I said that Oswald had ties to Russia. So October 1959, including his contact with Soviet Union, he took a 25-minute drive to the airport, then by taxi, no more than 5 minutes to reach the Soviet consul. C is a little grayed out. I can't really read that one. But then D, passenger list manifest at the U.S. consulate. Okay, so what the most important part in this is the date, October 1959. The CIA had already been monitoring Oswald's whereabouts. In fact, this was not the only way that the CIA dropped the ball. So next we actually have a letter by, I'm just going to call him Sergey, is what I'm going to call him. His name's Sergey. He sent it to a Russian ambassador in the embassy of USSR, but this is in Washington, D.C. And he let them know that he knew that Oswald was about ready to assassinate the president. We have it highlighted here in a second. I'm going to read through this whole document because there is so much misinformation going right now that I want to read what the actual document says, and I might cut it up later. But here, this is what it says. "Dear Sir, Mr. Wallace Consul gave me order to transmit this information to the U.S. government on August 9th, 1963 in Sofia, Bulgaria." Mr. Waslav is consul of embassy in the USSR. Okay. Gave me this information about Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald, August 14th, 1963. Mrs. something, girlfriend of Russian consul, came to my room and repeated that Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald is an assassin. He will kill President Kennedy. On August 15th, 1963, in Sofia, Bulgaria, at the airport and embassy car, I told Mr. Blackshire, American vice consul, that Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald is assassin. He has a weapon, or has ordered one. Mr. Blackshire said that it seems like he will kill someone. I said that Mr. Lee H. Oswald is preparing to kill the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. Mr. Blackshire said, where will it happen? I said they, right wing, will invite the president, criticize him in the newspaper, then kill him. It's not exactly how it happened. But let's keep reading. Quote, Mr. Blackshire told me that he will give the telegram to the Department of State, and he gave me the address of where to report. Here we go. At 9 a.m., August 19th, 1963, in Washington, D.C., I went to see Mr. Kippenham, director of the Special Counselor Service Department of State at 1901 Pennsylvania Ave, 11th floor. I told the director that I have information on President Kennedy. The director said, do not mention the name of President Kennedy. Only respond to the questions. The director said, tell us what will happen to Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald then. I said, Mr. Lee H. Oswald will be killed after kill Kennedy, or after he killed Kennedy. This is like broken Russian. I said, I will take the truth drug to tell you the truth. I will take truth drug to tell you the truth. You must believe me. Mr. H. Oswald will be killed after he killed Kennedy. I will take truth drug. I'll take it. I'll tell you the truth. That's my Russian accent for you guys. Director, tell us who else gets killed in this country. I said, as I heard, that Dr. Martin Luther King will be killed. Who will kill Dr. King? I said, there's a man in prison at the time. Mr. James Earl Ray was in prison at that time. Director asked where the assassination would happen. I said in Dallas, Texas. Okay, I'm done with the accent. Okay, but basically, they went back and forth. Let me read this last part. Director did call on the FBI agents after the FBI used anesthesia gas to freeze me and drug me to keep amnesia. I told the Department of State that Mr. Lee Harvey Oswald have a weapon. Go see him. Director told me you can have weapons. So what if Oswald has a weapon? The CIA knew. The government knew. People, a sect at minimum, a sect was in on it, and they knew this had been hidden from the American people for years, and it's coming out. This individual knew it was about to happen, and they did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. So if this isn't wild enough, let's talk about one more person that these documents also bring up a name. They bring up the name of a guy named Gary Underhill. He was allegedly connected to the CIA, and right after the JFK assassination, he actually hightails it out of there. Basically, he goes into full panic mode. He tells a small group of people inside the agency that the CIA, there's a small sect in the CIA that was behind it. And guess what happened? 6 months later, he was found dead, ruled suicide in his department. But you might not believe me, and that's okay. Let's pull up the letter. Quote, the day after the assassination, Gary Underhill left Washington in a hurry. Late in the evening, he showed up at the home of friends in New Jersey. He was very agitated. A small clique within the CIA is responsible for the assassination, he confided. I'm gonna read that one more time. A small clique in the CIA was responsible for the assassination. That's what he said. He was afraid for his life and probably would have to leave the country. Less than 6 months later, Underhill was found shot to death in a Washington apartment, and the coroner ruled it suicide. So Gary Underhill, he had been an intelligence agent during World War II and was a recognized authority on limited warfare and small arms. A researcher and writer on military affairs, he was on a first-name basis with many of the top brass in the Pentagon. He was also on intimate terms with a number of high-ranking CIA officials. He was one of the agency's unpeople who performed special assignments. At one time, he had been friend of Samuel Cummings of Aramco, an arms broker that numbers among the CIA. Ironically, Clean Sporting Goods of Chicago, from whence the mail order was purchased by. Oh, wow. So Clean Sporting Goods of Chicago, from whence I believe the mail allegedly was purchased. So the gun was purchased by Oswald. Okay, so what happens? Recap. This guy, leaves Washington in a hurry the moment that JFK gets assassinated. He goes and tells a small group of friends there's a small clique within the CIA responsible for this assassination, and just a few months later, he was dead, and it was ruled a suicide. But then that made me think, guys. That made me think. What happened to Mr. Underhill is a theme. There was a guy named Gary Webb. He was another journalist. He blew the whistle on CIA corruption in the 80s and 90s. He said that the CIA was letting drugs flood American streets to fund wars in Nicaragua. Guess what happened to this whistleblower? Well, this journalist that blew the whistle on the CIA was found dead, ruled a suicide, with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. You seen a pattern here? Now, why would the CIA want JFK out of the picture, right? That's really the question. To put it simply, JFK did not want war. He didn't want to play ball with the military-industrial complex. He didn't want endless wars. He wasn't willing to just send troops into Vietnam. He refused to invade Cuba. And most importantly, he realized that the intelligence agencies were not on his side. At one point, he literally said, and I quote, "I want to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the wind." According to Roger Stone, who wrote a book on this whole thing, Roger Stone said this, and this is a picture of the actual car after the assassination. Immediately after JFK was murdered, and his limousine was flown to D.C., stored in the White House garage, and instead of being preserved as a crime scene, the limo was thoroughly cleaned and the interior was reupholstered and effectively destroying forensic evidence. And Roger Stone is an expert on this topic. He's written a book on this topic. And that's what Roger Stone believes happened to the car. Sweeping things under the rug. So, now I bring it full circle. Because this is just bigger than JFK. Like, you might be sitting there thinking, so what? Like, why does this matter? This happened, 30 years ago, whatever. This is about what happens when government agencies get too much of it, go unchecked, and start operating in the shadows. It's the same reason that people question the Epstein situation. It's the same reason people question COVID. It's the same question, like the reason people got kind of weird about the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. This is a theme. This makes you wonder, maybe the good guys aren't the good guys sometimes. If the government has lied to us for years, and it was only the fringe conspiracy theorists that were made fun of when they said the CIA did it, and everyone's like, oh, the government didn't do it. It was Lee Harvey Oswald, you idiot. And it turns out the CIA did. A few takeaways on top of this. The final takeaway is this: just don't be afraid to question the narrative. Ask questions, dig deeper. And just because the media calls you crazy doesn't mean you are. Because if history's shown us anything over and over again, is what sometimes starts out as a crazy conspiracy theory often turns out to be the truth. So I encourage you guys to do your own research. I encourage you guys to challenge the status quo, ask good questions, and pursue truth. Be authentic, pursue truth. Couple other takeaways really quick. The one thing I will say is when it comes to names of people, incriminating names, I doubt those will ever come up. There might be them in the files, but to me, any real incriminating evidence will just never appear in public. Very similar to the Epstein files. The one thing I will say is the release of the JFK files like this potentially kind of feels like an attempt to get us to forget about the Epstein file debacle that the Trump administration had. I'm very grateful that the Trump administration did release the JFK files. But we still need to hold them accountable to release the Epstein files like they said they would. We want files more like this, not just blocked out, pretty much redacted documents that no one can read because it's just Sharpie marks over it. So, Trump administration, thank you for this. Now, let's also release the Epstein files as well. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Do you believe these documents? Do you think it was the CIA? Do you think there's more to the story? Do you think more is going to be uncovered in these 80,000 pages? Let me know in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Okay.